ahead and get started today. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deandra Coleman. I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia SBDC is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 27 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one consulting services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Managing Your WordPress Website, is presented by the Virginia SBDC and is the first in a two-part series. The second part, Success Through E-commerce, will be on April 21st, and the series will be offered again in May. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the large number of participants today, everyone's microphone is muted, but if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box. If we are unable to get to your question, you can email us at help@virginiasbdc.org after the webinar and ask your question there. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session. Cameron has over 18 years of experience in technology and as a senior tech consultant in Silicon Valley, where he helped Fortune 500 companies improve their digital marketing and e-commerce. He has founded several tech companies, including an SaaS website excuse me, for tree preservation and a blockchain platform for nonprofits. Cameron is accomplished in language culture, has an MBA and MA, and believes new technology products have the ability to help shape our world for the better. Cameron is now working with the Virginia SBDC as Chief Digital Advisor, and we are fortunate enough to have him today to share his expertise with us. Please join me in welcoming our presenter for today, Cameron Nelson.
Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great day. We're going to be giving the how to manage your WordPress website. So if you're looking to learn more about WordPress, then this is the right place. Let's go ahead and get started. So our presentation goals for today is, first, we're going to discover what WordPress is and if you should use it for your unique business. Secondly, I'm going to walk you through how to set up WordPress, how to select your theme, and what considerations go into theme selection. And third, we're going to talk about how to customize your website with images and pictures and setting it up with your e-commerce to really make it your own and enable you to sell your products online. I'm assuming the people in the audience are coming from a wide background as far as their experience with WordPress. Some of you maybe have just heard the name and are not sure what it is or what it does, or if you need to use it. Others might have already managed a WordPress website and you have more detailed or technical questions that you'd like answered. I'm going to keep this presentation at a fairly high level, but we're going to have time at the end for questions and answers. So if you have those more detailed targeted questions to WordPress for your application and your website, please feel free to ask those questions then. And I'm also available for follow-up meetings with anybody on one-on-one counseling to talk about in more detail your WordPress websites. So let's jump into it. Websites are becoming an increasingly important tool for selling products online and really critical to the success of any organization. WordPress is a great tool for creating your business website. It's one of many tools, but it is really unique because it makes creating and updating your website very easy, and it can also grow with your website over time. And I'll explain more what that means in a minute. Not everybody knows that WordPress started about 15 years ago as a blogging platform, and you still see that throughout WordPress in the menu system and the administrative panel, which we're going to look at a lot today. Not many people use WordPress for blogs anymore, and that's fine. Fortune 500 companies through startups are using WordPress for their websites. So it can do everything you will need in a website platform. When you start with WordPress, you'll need to spend some time getting it set up, and this means learning a new system and a new way of interacting with your website administrative panel. This takes some learning, and I usually say it takes between 5 and 10 hours to really learn the ins and outs of WordPress. And that's what I'm going to jump into today and give you a head start in learning how to navigate WordPress. Some of you might already be advanced users. You're more familiar with computers, more familiar with HTML and CSS coding, and so WordPress is going to be very simple for you to learn. The benefits of using WordPress are many. WordPress is widely supported. What that means is that if you're selling your product online and your customer has a smartphone, an iOS device, or an Android device, or they're coming at it from a computer, either a PC or a Mac, WordPress is going to work on any platform anywhere in the world. It's widely supported. Another nice feature of WordPress is that you can create different logins for different users. So you might have an employee that you would like to manage a certain page or pages of your WordPress website. You can create them a unique login for free, and they'll be able to contribute to certain parts of your website for you. You can choose your own web host. So WordPress is a technology foundation, and you can install this technology on many different hosts like Google and GoDaddy, or some of the bigger ones out there. Your website host is simply that file server that serves up the web pages to the visitors. The server can be located anywhere in the world, and they basically all work the same. So Google and GoDaddy are some of the most widely used ones, and they have excellent customer support, and they're pretty price competitive. But if you want to find a different host, WordPress can be hosted almost anywhere. The great feature of WordPress are the plugins. The plugins for WordPress come in several different flavors. There's a lot of free plugins, which will allow you to have functionality like a contact form or adding a video or some e-commerce capabilities. And then there's paid plugins that offer additional features. Basically, anything you can think of that you might want to do on your website, you'll be able to find it supported with a plugin. So this is great because you don't need to write all the code yourself from scratch, because these plugins have done it, and they pretty seamlessly integrate with WordPress. There's sometimes a few rough edges with using plugins, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. But overall, the plugin ecosystem is really a compelling reason to use WordPress. WordPress is built for search engine optimization. And what this means is that when somebody searches Google or Bing or any search engine, the rankings appear based on how well that website is using keywords that match the search terms. So WordPress is really made with the understanding that the search engine optimization is important, and they help you to reach a basic level of search engine optimization without having to do any extra work. There's many customizable themes to start off building your WordPress website. I think the themes are one of the things I love the most. They offer a beautiful and streamlined and modern looking website experience. Some themes are free, others you pay for, and you'll easily be able to find a theme for almost any industry or category. I've helped people find themes for nail salons or hairdressers or industrial manufacturing. There's just a great variety. They're made from professional web developers, and there are several places to get them, and I'll talk about that in a minute. There's been some confusion from small business owners of, is WordPress cost money or is it free? It is free. It's the underlying technology that runs the websites, and it's always free. WordPress itself is a nonprofit organization. You do have to pay some fees, though, to set up a website. You have to pay the website registration fee, which is about $15 a year. You have to pay the hosting fee to one of these companies like Google or GoDaddy. That's about $7 or $8 a month. And then if you want email addresses and things like that, those will be in addition. But WordPress itself is always free. And lastly, WordPress is usually able to be installed and set up on your host of choice just with a click or sometimes 2 clicks. So it's a very simple process to get your WordPress website started. One thing that I would like to point out as a word of caution is that building a WordPress website and managing it does require an investment of time. I like to say that between 2 and 5 hours a month is what someone should expect to spend in doing the just routine maintenance things that you need on any website. Solving little bugs, updating plugins, updating content. And some business owners feel like they don't have the time to put towards that each month. And that's fine. Not everybody does. And in that case, there's even simpler website building options that might be a better fit. And those could be Squarespace and Wix as 2 examples. So WordPress is not for everybody, but I hope by the end of this presentation, you'll have a pretty good idea of, is it right for your business? So the first thing we're going to talk about is the theme selection. Themes are one of my favorite things about WordPress. There's so much variety out there, and it can be overwhelming, actually. There's easily thousands of different themes that you can start from. Several good places to look for themes, but by no means the only places, but these are my three favorites. Well, the official WordPress website offers a good collection of free themes that are built by the WordPress organization. You don't need to use the themes only found on their website though. The themeforest.net website is a collection of themes from web developers from all over the world. Some of the most beautiful and modern looking websites, really cutting edge stuff. And if you find a website there that was built in 2021, you're going to notice that it's just a clean and modern looking website. So it's always good to find a clean and modern looking website so it can kind of last several years without having to be updated. And also colorlib.com is another great website to go to with a good selection of free and paid WordPress themes. So between these three sites, if you do some searching on them, search for the type of business that you're in, you're going to find a lot of themes. You can read reviews on the themes, look at the star ratings, and help you pick a theme or two that you'd like to try out. Now, if the themes are free, you're able to swap one theme out for another quite easily, and I'll show you how. If the themes are paid, you'll want to be more cautious about which one you want to go with and just buy that one theme that you're really committed to building your website on. So for anybody who's ever managed a WordPress website before, this screen will be very familiar. This is the WordPress dashboard and administrative panel. For better or for worse, you'll be spending a lot of time here updating your website. I think that it's a fairly straightforward interface once you get to know it, but there are some things that can be confusing, especially to people who have never seen this before. Over on the left side, you have your toolbar, and there's a lot of links here to go to pages and settings, but not all of these are very important. So I'm going to talk about which ones are not important and which ones are the most important, and tell you what you can do in each one. So the most important items here, going from top to bottom, are media, pages, appearance, plugins, users, and settings. You do need to go through each of these when you're building your website before you launch it to make sure they're properly set up before your website will be able to be launched and used by your visitors. So the first one of these important items is the media. Media is where you will upload and manage all of your images and videos for the website. So many default templates are going to come with some stock images here in the media section. You can delete those, you can upload your own images, and then once your images are here in media, you'll be able to place them on the website and swap out some of those default images that came with the template. And I'll walk you through how to upload new images once we get into a live demo in a few minutes. The next important page that you'll be using a lot is the page management. This is where you'll add pages, modify pages like the title and the description. You can edit the content on the page as well. So you'll be spending a lot of your time here manipulating the pages and changing them to make them just how you want them. By default, you see that there's 5 or 6 different pages. These came standard with the theme. And so some of these you will not need to use, and that's fine. The pages can be kind of a repository for pages that you might later want to introduce to your website, and not all of these are live on the website. Another very important section is the theme management under appearance. So under the appearance and themes, you can change the aspects of your theme and the options that the theme gives you to work with, like swapping out the logo for yours, maybe putting a new image in, putting a video in, or deleting stuff. You'll be able to have those options here under the themes. And also on this page, it allows you to pick a different theme. So like I said a few minutes ago, if you have a couple themes that you like, you can customize one theme and then launch it, and then you can swap over to a new theme just to see how it would look. And you do that all through this page here under the Appearances tab. The plugin management section is very important, and like I said, plugins is one of the biggest highlights, I think, to using WordPress. The plugin ecosystem, there's tens of thousands of plugins, many that are free, and they give you great additional functionality to your website in addition to whatever the theme gives you. So on this page, you can install a new plugin, search for plugins, and also update plugins. So it's always a good idea to keep your plugins updated, I think, and that ensures the best security and compatibility for your website. But there can be some downsides as well, because what happens is plugins interact with other computer code running on other servers and other websites, for example, Amazon or Facebook. And if those platforms update their code, your plugin might need to be updated to work with it with a new version. So that's why there's some updates you see here in the screenshot, updates available. It's always a good idea to update to ensure you're compatible. Sometimes updating can cause problems, and that's a very rare occurrence. And for most people, I recommend if you see an update, just go ahead and do it. If there are problems, say something breaks when you update a plugin, say your contact form stops working, you can usually roll back to the last version of that plugin to resolve the issue temporarily. But we'll get into a little bit more details about those possible issues in a minute. And the next section is the user management. So here you can add different types of users to manage and edit your website. This particular website only has one user, Khadija. She's the administrator, but if we wanted to create additional users to manage a certain page or pages, this is where we would do that. Adding users here is free, and there's a limit of something like 100, so you never really need to worry about adding too many users. And the last section that's really important is the settings section. So you can think of these settings as the more underlying settings or the foundational settings for your WordPress. The theme settings and the theme options are a layer above this. So these settings are important just for the general functioning and well-being of your website. Typically, these settings will not need to be changed very frequently. I recommend that you just go here once when you're setting up your website, make sure things like your time zone is correct, your language, your date format, simple things, make sure that they're good, and then move on. You won't need to go into the settings more frequently than that. So what I want to do now is move over to a live demo of a website that I've worked on building with a client. And I'm going to show you in real time what some of these options do in WordPress. So this website is for a food business. This is a simple WordPress website that I created in a couple of days using a theme that was pre-built. And if you are on your website and you're logged into WordPress, you'll have these options up here. I'm not going to go through all of these options right now, but I will jump over to the dashboard because this is where I want to spend most of the time. So this dashboard should look familiar to the screenshots in the presentation. And what I'm going to do is walk you through the sections that I talked about and show you some more details. So first we're going to go to media. The media is the collection of all the images, and here you'll be able to delete, rename, and add new images. To add a new image, it's very simple. You just click on the button Add New, and you can drag and drop your images here and upload them. Keep in mind there's a maximum file size. This is hard-coded into WordPress, so 32 megabytes should not be a problem for most businesses. But if you do need to resize photos, you can go into Photoshop or some other program to make sure the image file size per file is less than 32 megabytes. So the media library is a place that you'll spend a lot of time as you upload pictures and remove pictures. And any picture that's here, you can then change on a web page, and I'll show you that in a minute. A very important section is pages. So pages is where you will interact with all the different pages of your website, even though some might not be published or publicly visible. So this particular website has an about page, a blog page, which is not published. And again, when I said that WordPress started as a blogging platform, and that's why things like this even exist. People don't really use them much. So for the most part, you could ignore the blog page. Contact page is pretty critical for any business, so this is one that you'll want to have. The home page is the only strictly necessary page out of all of these. The home page is, of course, that landing page that any website visitor sees the first time they come to your website. And what I want to do is show you how to quickly edit this page from this screen. So as you see, as I hover over a page, I have several buttons that pop up. I have Edit, Quick Edit, Trash, and View. Trash will delete it. View will just bring me back to the page and view it as a user. Edit is the button that you're going to click on to be able to jump into the editor and make some simple changes. So different themes have different types of editors. So this screen that I'm on now might change slightly depending on what theme you have installed. And typically though, themes are what we call a WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get. And what that means is now that you're on this page logged in, if you make, all you need to do is click anywhere you want, and you can make a change. And once you click update in the upper right-hand corner, that change will be live immediately. So it's a WYSIWYG editor. You do not need to know coding. You do not need to know HTML or CSS to customize your website. So changing any of the text and images is very, very simple. To change an image, you can just click on it. There's an option here to replace the image. And you can go ahead and look for images, again, in your media library. Only images that you've uploaded are going to show up here. So this is a very simple way anybody can customize a website once you edit the page and you get here. You can do everything from customizing the links to the buttons, to deciding if they open in a new tab or the same tab. So it's a pretty easy editor. You can change the size of the fonts, all these options. So I'm not going to save this because I don't want to mess up this live website, but that's how you edit a page. It's quite simple. And if you want to create a new page from scratch, you can just click this button, add a new page. You can give it a title and just get going. So you'll be spending a lot of time here editing pages, but it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. Comments is not really used. That's just a function or a legacy function of the blogs. So you can ignore comments. Appearance is a really important place. This is where you can go to install a theme that you downloaded or bought from one of those websites I mentioned. You can also search the WordPress collection of themes. And you'll see here, they're giving you many themes that are free. And it's very easy to install. You just click this blue button, install. You can also preview it. And what this will do is actually take your text and images and try to place it in this theme quickly so you can preview how it looks. It doesn't always work perfectly though, but you can always install it and then you can get into those settings and customize it. But if you pick a theme from a different website, it's very easy to install here. You'll just click this button at the top, upload theme, and the theme format, file format will be a zip file. All you do is you upload the zip file here, it will install, and then your website will be converted over to that new theme. And I think one of the most powerful things in WordPress is just looking at different themes and installing them. It usually just takes a few seconds. It doesn't cost any money if they're free. So there's really no harm in experimenting at this stage. You want to pick a theme that you feel really comfortable with and that you really love. Because the worst thing is spending time customizing a theme just to find something you really want to have happen isn't going to fit with that theme very well. And then you have to redo a lot of work. So I think the theme selection and the theme search is something that to really focus on. And so it might be a good stage to contact myself or somebody else who's familiar with website design and just get some feedback if a certain theme will work well for your business. The next section is the plugins section. So this is a really great section where you can view your plugins. Each one of these plugins on this live site is just doing something different that is increasing the functionality of the site. As you can see, 3 of these have updates. So what I should do is click update now, and I will do it later. And it will update these plugins. It just takes a few seconds. So something that you should always be doing. If you see update options, go ahead and do that. Adding new plugins and searching for plugins is great because there is a huge collection out there, a lot of free plugins. Here you can see a featured section, a popular section, a recommended section. There are many plugins to search from. It's saying there's 9,000 plugins. So, one thing you can do is I recommend deciding what feature you want your website to have. Let's just say it's a contact form. You can search for that. And you're going to get a lot of results for contact forms. Now, installing any of these is simple. You just click the install button. If any require you to pay for them, there'll be a prompt to pay with a credit card, but many of these are free. So the problem could be there are many search results for any they're saying there's 9,000 search results for contact. So let's try something more, a little bit more specific. Yeah, there's 5,643 different plugins for contact forms. So you might be wondering, well, how in the world do you pick one? Well, if you don't have a recommendation from a professional, what I would recommend you do is go ahead and look at the ones with the highest number of reviews and the highest stars. So for example, this one, WP Forms, is probably the highest rated one there right now. And then you could click install and jump into customizing that and setting that up. The next section that we'll talk about is the user section. So in this website, there's only the one user. The role is an administrator. This gives the most level of access. It allows you to install plugins, change the themes. You can create different types of users with different levels of access. So when you create a new user, you obviously need a username and an email address. You don't need the name, the person's name, a password, and then their role level can be anything from an administrator, which you always need one administrator. That's usually the first user that you create. And you can have an editor, author, contributor, subscriber, different levels of access that are defined on just what they can do. So if you want to give an employee access, you probably would make them an administrator, maybe an editor or an author of certain pages. But it's very easy to add those users and manage them all from here. And the next section that's important is the general settings. Again, these are the settings that are more the foundational bedrock settings. You have settings that are theme specific, but these affect the underlying functionality of the website in general. So things that you just want to make sure they're correct, make sure the title is correct and the tagline is correct. Make sure that and these things, a lot of these will be pre-filled, but the URL is correct, time zone, and just your settings here. You don't typically need to go into any of these sub menus under general, unless you maybe have a developer who says, you need to go in there to do something specific. You normally won't need to hop in there for any reason. So I hope now that you have seen the basic functionality of WordPress, you have an idea in your mind of, well, is WordPress the direction I want to go? Do I need its functions? Do I have the time to commit to learning it and maintaining it? Would I prefer something simpler like Squarespace or Wix? And what I want to do now is open up this to a conversation. We'll start a Q&A section, and we have almost a half an hour. So I'd love to hear your specific questions. I think you can type them in the Q&A, and then those will be filtered to me, and I'll be answering those live.
All right. Thanks, Cameron. So let's get started. So I had a couple questions about the actual WordPress site. Is it a URL or something you have to download?
Great question. So just talking about the basics of WordPress. WordPress is not a site or URL or something you download. WordPress is software that's installed on the host that you pay for. So if you go with GoDaddy as your host, that when you create an account, you find a domain name, yourbusiness.com, they will have an option that says, do you want to install WordPress? You just click a button that says yes. GoDaddy already has the latest WordPress version. They just install that for you. Then you set up that administrative username and password, and then you can log into the dashboard, this dashboard right here. So that's the process for getting WordPress set up.
And kind of along the lines of talking about basics, could you explain what a plugin is?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a list of plugins on this website. The plugins are software code that are written to have certain functionality. So for example, if you want to have a header image that automatically rotates on your website, there'd be a plugin that would allow you to select those images and it will do the rest, right? The plugin's already the code written to do that. Another example would be a contact form, a submit form. Another example would be an e-commerce plugin, so people could pay with their credit card. So these are 3 examples of different types of plugins. There's literally hundreds of different types of plugins that do many, many things, but they just give you additional functionality on the foundation of the website that you've selected with your theme.
When you add a new page, is it is it in the same look or theme as the other pages on your site, or do you have to find that theme again?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So when you install a theme and you go to add a new page, it will already have the basic look and feel of the theme. Absolutely. It'd be very inconvenient to have like a blank page that didn't match the theme. So they all help you create that page matching the theme already. Yeah. And then you'll be able to decide what you want on that page by adding a text box or an image place or, bullet point list or something like that.
Do you have to worry about any viruses and downloading themes outside of WordPress?
That's a good question. I couldn't be 100% certain that you couldn't get a virus, meaning there's maybe a potential there. I'm not a security expert exactly, but I've never heard of somebody getting a virus with a WordPress theme. But yeah, I think that's a great question, and you could probably do some more research on that specifically to see if there's ever been reports of that. But in my experience of dealing with probably 100 or 150 different WordPress websites, I've never had that problem. Just as an additional point, though, you might want to also consider the plugins you install might have a risk of carrying a virus. If you download an app from the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, some apps have viruses, some apps have malware. And so it's probably not unheard of that a plugin for WordPress could have also malware. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's an unavoidable risk nowadays, but if you download those plugins that are the most highest rated and highest reviewed, you're probably going to be safer.
That's actually probably a good topic. We have a cybersecurity series coming up with Tom. So that's actually, if you guys want to come to that one with Tom, then you guys can ask your question there. That's a good one for him to answer, I'm sure. Perfect. Too. How would you enter testimonials?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of themes are going to have a place for testimonials. Testimonials nowadays for businesses are really critical. Usually a theme will have a section for those right on the home page. If you have a lot of testimonials, you might have a completely separate page to have many of them. So if there's already a place for testimonials on your theme, what you'll be able to modify will be like a picture of the client or the business and the text. So you'll just click on that and swap out their default text and picture for your own. It'll be very easy. If testimonials are important to you, but they're not already included in the theme that you want, it could be a bit of an issue. I'm sure you can find plugins for testimonials, but then it's not built into the theme. It might not be as simple as finding a theme already with testimonials. So that's why I said that theme selection is really important to identify those key things that you want your website to support, because if they're already in that theme, it makes your work, 4 or 5 times faster.
Can you talk about best SEO practices for a WordPress website?
Yeah, that's a good question. So SEO is how the search engines like Google will show your website in a search result. So say you're selling ice cream in Baltimore. If somebody searches for ice cream parlor Baltimore, it's going to find those websites that have the highest prevalence of those terms and those words. So essentially, you want to use words on your website that just describe what you're doing, what your service is, and its location in the most simple and just plain language possible. WordPress, being designed with SEO in mind, makes sure that when the Google looks at the code of the websites, that those words are displayed in the right way that Google can see them and it can rank your page. You can get much fancier with SEO than what I just described. There's professional companies that do nothing but SEO, and a lot of that is research into your customers and what they're searching for, so the words on the website can match what they're searching for. So there's a whole lot of time and money you can spend in going down that path. But for the basics, I would recommend describe what you're doing in the most straightforward manner possible. There's no real way to game the system or to increase your rank artificially. There used to be, and Google and the other search engines got wise to that and started to ban those websites that tried that kind of stuff. So that's my recommendation for SEO.
Will plugins transfer from theme to theme?
Yes, typically they will. So you can think of it like this. The WordPress is the foundation, and the theme is kind of like the house in a lot of ways. It's the design of the house. The plugin is like, putting a new faucet in the bathroom. So the plugins will usually move just fine with the theme. You might need to update a plugin if you were to switch themes, and you'd see the option to update. But I think that would be the worst thing that would happen is you would have to update that plugin. But yeah, I would say 99% of the time, it'll just be a seamless transition.
How do I test a new theme for an existing WordPress site?
How do you test a theme, an existing theme? I guess I don't quite understand the question. Yeah, maybe you could give me a little bit more details on that one, whoever asked that.
Yeah, Gail, if you want to expand a little, we can circle back.
Yeah, thank you.
If you are updating the info on a page, is there a way to save a copy of the original page?
Great question. So yeah, can you like create an archive or a backup before you go and make changes? By default in WordPress, there's not that option, but there are plugins, mini plugins that will do that. They can create an archive of a page or like a timeline to have like a snapshot of all your pages, and they'll do that for you automatically every day or every hour even, or manually when you click a button. So for that, I would search the plugin store for page backup, and you'll find many good options that'll do that for free.
Is there some disadvantage to having WordPress host your site? If you buy one of their plans, the price includes support and a domain name for a year.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I mentioned, Google and GoDaddy are some of the biggest hosts for websites in the world, and they support WordPress. WordPress.org also will host for you. They're all competitively priced and offer similar level of uptime, meaning they don't really crash. Their servers are up all the time. So it's up to you. It's a good option. I think WordPress hosting, they're much smaller, so they don't have as many websites, which means maybe they're don't have as many people dedicated to looking for security vulnerabilities. These companies like Google and GoDaddy have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are kind of counter-hacking hackers who are trying to get into websites. So they're some of the most secure for those reasons. But that's not to say you wouldn't be perfectly fine with WordPress or any other host. So I would say you'd probably be fine with that.
Does WordPress automatically have an SSL certificate, or is that something I need to use a plugin for? I've run into this issue on other sites.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad that we got talking about SSL. SSL is a secure layer that encrypts data entered on your website with a destination. And this mostly used for credit cards. So if somebody is buying your widget on your website, entering their credit card information, it's a law that you have to use SSL to encrypt that data between your website host and the Visa or MasterCard network. By default, SSL is not going to be running on a WordPress website. The simplest way for SSL to work is if you use a plugin that's an e-commerce plugin. Any e-commerce plugin, I should say most e-commerce plugins have SSL. They're doing that for you, because what they do is they write the code that when somebody enters the credit card, it actually is sending that and processing that. So they're the ones who are encrypting it. So the biggest e-commerce plugin and the best, I think, is called WooCommerce, W-O-O Commerce. And that definitely has SSL. It's just part of their fee structure. They give that to you. And most of these e-commerce platforms, they charge just a percentage, like 1% or 1.5% of all your sales to process for you and to provide the SSL. The other option is you can buy your own SSL certificate. Essentially, you go to an SSL website that creates them, and you will buy it and pay about $100 a month. So some of you might prefer to go that route, but honestly, it's a lot more time consuming to like set that up, and then you install it and there's code involved. And probably most people will need to hire a developer to install SSL yourselves. So my recommendation is use a e-commerce plugin like WooCommerce, and they're going to take care of that for you.
And we heard back from Gail, who had the question earlier. I have a WordPress theme from several years ago. I want to update it with another theme, but I fear if I click another theme, I will lose the site as it is now.
Yes, that makes sense. And that is a valid concern, Gail. When you install a new WordPress theme, it's going to try to take the text and the images on your pages and translate those to where they think it should go in the new theme. This is usually a far from perfect process, and you usually end up with lots of weird things that don't fit or things that are just missing that you need. And so depending on how many pages your website is, you might spend significant time repairing those kind of missing parts on the new theme. What you can do is, I'll show you again on the Appearance tab, you can preview a theme, and that might be the best thing for you to do. You see, if you're looking at my screen now, you have this option for a live preview. So if you just, you can install your theme, your new theme by clicking Add New, upload, and you can pick the zip file. Once you've done that, that new theme is going to appear here in this list. And then you'll have the option to live preview. So install that new theme, click this live preview button when you hover over it, and then you'll see what it'll look like before you activate. Now the button activate here is the one you're talking about, where it will change your website. So definitely live preview before you activate, and hopefully nothing looks horribly wrong. If it does, nobody's going to see that until you activate it, so you're safe. Good question.
What is the difference between WordPress.org and WordPress.com?
Yeah, that's a great question. WordPress.org is the nonprofit organization that maintains WordPress. WordPress is run and basically owned by a nonprofit organization. WordPress.com, I believe, is just probably the way that they would sell their hosting plans. It's the same group, it's the same organization, but one's like a for-profit branch. For the hosting, I would imagine. I haven't gone to WordPress.com in a while, but WordPress.org is the main site. That's where you'll go to, you can download their themes that they make on WordPress.org.
Does WordPress provide a business email with my domain name?
Not by default. Yeah, but any emails you want are going to be a separate conversation, though it's not hard to do. So if you use GoDaddy as your host, for example, GoDaddy will give you an email address at your domain name and charge about $5 a month. But what I recommend for most small businesses is to use the Google-powered email system. And what that means is that you can get an email at your domain, like joe@mybusiness.com, but it's running through Gmail. So when you log in, it's just like you're in Gmail for your personal Gmail. And you also have access to all of the same features like Google Drive, Google Calendar, all the Google apps, so to speak, are there for your business. And I find that's just a really good value for money. That's $6 per email address per month to run it through Google. And if you want to get started on that, just search for Google email address for my domain, and there'll be a kind of a step-by-step process. It usually takes 5 or 10 minutes, and you'll need things like your GoDaddy username and password, but then it'll authenticate that you own the domain. You put in your billing information, you create your first email address and get set up. So it's usually a really easy process, and I would recommend most of you do that. If you're on a real budget, the cheapest email you can get is about $1 a month. And I saw that through Zoho, ZOHO.com. But again, it's not Gmail, it doesn't have those features, so I would recommend the Gmail experience.
What plugins do you recommend for displaying a library? I have a library of 800 plus items that I want to be searchable with custom tags and display images while loading.
Yeah, so I assume you mean you have like 800 products you're selling, not a library of books, but like a library of products. So that's a great question, and I think it's more of the theme selection than the plugin actually. When you look at themes, some will be made to sell many products because they're going to have categories, filters, kind of like if you go to Amazon, you can search by the different category and then you can filter it. So that's something the theme will provide. And I would definitely recommend you look at themes that have a good selection process. So somebody can easily find one of those 800 items they want to buy. You shouldn't need a plugin, really. And I would recommend not trying to do that with a plugin, because that's a pretty serious foundational part of your website. And I think it would be more streamlined if that was built into the theme.
Besides updating plugins when prompted, what other maintenance might need to be done?
Yeah, other than updating the plugins, updating the WordPress version itself. So on my screen here up in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that I already have an update available. So WordPress 5.7 is now available. I'm probably using 5.6 or something. And it would be good for me to update that. So updating the plugins, updating the WordPress version, and sometimes your theme might have updates. And if your theme has an update, you'll have a notification here. Actually, most of these have an update. You see, new version available, update now. And the reason why all these things have updates is because, like I said, they're interfacing with lots of different computers all around the world, running different code and different operating systems. And as the internet evolves, as it gets better, faster, themes and plugins need to be updated to ensure they're compatible.
What are the most important features and themes that I should be focusing on in order to choose a theme?
Yeah, it's a great question. A lot of it comes down to what your business is, what you're trying to achieve. And I think that it's a great time to have a conversation with somebody like myself, as kind of a technology advisor, to learn about your business and recommend a theme. But you could break it down to a few major categories. Am I selling a product, like a widget? Am I selling a service, like a nail salon? Those are two main categories, and they both require a very different approach in your website. So you can start by thinking at that level, and then if you search through those theme websites for the service business or selling ice cream business, you're going to find themes that are custom made to already support that kind of business. And then if you want further assistance after that, reach out to me, reach out to the SBDC, and we'll be able to work with you one-on-one.
Do I need to register my site with search engines?
No. The great thing about search engines is that they're always crawling the web, searching for new websites and new pages. And that process is called indexing. And indexing typically on a new website, if you launch it, it'll typically take 24 to 48 hours. And then Google will know about it, Bing will know about it. The world will essentially know about it, and it will be findable through a search. But there's nothing you need to do. In fact, it's quite difficult to make your website unsearchable. There are ways to make your pages not findable through a search engine, but it's kind of advanced. So if you want to be found, it's happening by default.
Do you have a favorite security plugin to keep WordPress the site secure?
Yeah, great question. I don't, and typically I don't find that people use security plugins. I guess the reason is because unless Google or GoDaddy or your host gets hacked, you're not in danger, your website is not in danger. And unless somebody steals your password to log in with your administrative account, your website's not in danger. So, I mean, if you have something that's really of high value that you're very concerned about being stolen from your website, then yeah, I think it would be good to talk to an online security expert and see what the best way would be to safeguard it. Because maybe the best way would be not to have it on your website in the first place, like put it somewhere else in a secure cloud storage. I'm not sure. But in general, for these e-commerce businesses, you don't really need to worry about security, because Google and GoDaddy, like I said, have huge teams working on security. And if you just look in the news for the last time GoDaddy was hacked, I can't even think of the last time, So they're pretty secure platforms, and make sure your password is secure, and then I think you should be good to go.
And again, that's something we have our cybersecurity expert probably weigh in on as well. So if you guys have that question, just send us an email. I think that fresh content regularly helps with SEO. Is that true?
Yeah, and that's true. And a great way to keep your content fresh is by creating blog posts. And so a lot of websites, have either a blog post that's updated every week with new information. And for that, WordPress is already really well established. WordPress has that blogging functionality. I would say maybe 15 or 20% of the small businesses I work with blog on their website. And they typically do it because with more words on their website being updated on a regular basis, yes, you are more likely to be found. And so that's a good thing. Though not everybody has the time to be creating blog posts every week, but for some businesses it can really help. Like if you're an architect or a CPA or some professional service provider, and you're creating blog posts on interesting and unique topics for your target customer, then yeah, you can be adding a lot of value to your website through that. And it will help slightly with your page coming up in search results because you have a wider variety of words that are on your page, and Google's more likely to be able to find a match.
What's a common reason for a page not to update the work you've done onto the live site when it shows in your editor?
There's only really one reason I can think of, and I'll hop in to edit this page. We're looking at the contact page here, but if I were to make a change, like delete that period, I need to click the update button. If I click this update button, it will automatically be updated within a few seconds on the page online. So if you're clicking that button and the change is not happening, that's a pretty serious problem. If that is your case, the thing that I would recommend you do is contact your hosting provider to delete your WordPress installation or your WordPress website and kind of start fresh. It's not something I've run into very much, but it's probably a pretty underlying problem with the host, and either they should start you fresh or they should have a way to fix it.
Are all themes compatible now with all types of devices and sizes?
No, they're not. Definitely not. You would hope that if you go to a WordPress theme website, that they're all going to be up to date and they're all going to be compatible across every device. But if you find a theme that was made 3 or 4 years ago, and you can, and you might say this is a beautiful theme, but it was actually made 4 years ago and it hasn't been updated, and you can see all that information when it's been updated, you might find a theme that is not compatible with some things if it was just 3 or 4 years old. So I would start my search with themes made in 2021 or 2020, just because you can be pretty sure they're going to be very broadly supported. And again, if you found a theme that was 5 years old, but it's had constant updates, you can be pretty sure it's going to be broadly supported. So.
My WordPress site says I need to update to a business plan to install plugins, but aren't there free plugins?
Yes, there are many free plugins. So what you're describing with upgrading to the business plan, I'm sure is something to do with the host that you're using, and I'm not sure what host that is. If you were on GoDaddy, for example, even their cheapest WordPress hosting plan allows you to do plugins. So it might be a host specific thing. You might have a host that has a tier that's cheap that doesn't allow plugins, which is unusual because plugins are one of the best things about WordPress, but that host might be trying to get you to pay more money to be able to install plugins. So I think you should check their pricing plans and see what plan you're on and see, yeah, and pay more for the support for plugins, or move your host to a different, maybe better platform.
Using Elementor Pro, every time I create a nav bar for the menu, but it does not show on the navigation bar. How do you think I would fix that?
That's a great question, and without actually seeing it, I don't have an answer right away. I've used Elementor, and it's another WYSIWYG editor. For those of you who are not familiar with Elementor, it's just a way to change the website by clicking on elements and just changing them. It sounds like there's a bug with that Elementor install. Maybe you need to reinstall the theme, because usually Elementor is part of a theme. But yeah, if you want me to look into that more, reach out to me. I'll jump back to my email address here. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my email is right here. I might be able to help, but it might also be something that will require a professional developer to go in and fix. So,
And I'm gonna post that. I'll post that in the chat real quick here too. If company is dissolved or changed, is it better to delete the old company and set up a new WordPress, or change the old WordPress company? If it's deleted, how do you do that?
okay, well, so I guess there's there's different answers to that question, I guess, depending on the exact scenario. But let's just say your company is changing its name and its branding. That's kind of how I understood the question. Um, if it's a name change, then if the older website works as far as the functionality, I don't see any reason to start from scratch. Assuming you're selling the same products, you have maybe the same contact information, right? You want to keep a lot of that the same. You want to change the title and the logo. That would be a simple matter. If you're changing everything up for like the products and the company address and the contact information, then you could still keep the same theme and just update all of that. But the most drastic thing would be to pick a new theme and just start from scratch. So I guess there's different levels of where you'd want to look at that answer. But if you want to contact me, I might be able to help you further.
What's the error 404 page mean, and is it possible that would happen to my WordPress site?
All right, great question. So 404 is an error that's been around as long as the internet has, and it just basically means page not found. So if you click on a link that has an address for a page like about.html, and the about page is not there, or it's called something different, like maybe about_2, you're going to get an error that says 404 page not found. It can happen with any website, WordPress included. So what I'd recommend is that if you have a WordPress website, just go through and click on all of the links. If any come up with a page that says 404 error, it means the link is pointing to a page that doesn't exist, and you'll just want to probably correct the name, or maybe there's a typo in the link, and then it will work fine.
Years ago, I tried WordPress, but I found the terminology to be different from other web design software like Dreamweaver. Pages had parents, children, or orphan, etc. If a page changed, one had to be changed one or the other. Do they still use this, or has this become more user-friendly over the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, I also used Dreamweaver a bit back in the day. That's, I think, pretty old software, but WordPress has changed. They don't really have a parent-child affiliation. If you look at the page structure, they're all at the same level, so to speak. You see, they don't have any sub-levels, which I think is what you were talking about. So I would say it's more user-friendly. Every time like WordPress 5.7 is available, every time they update it, which they do frequently, they are improving the interface and improving things. So if you looked at this 5 years ago, I'm sure it's going to be more intuitive and modern than it was back then.
Where can we learn more about WordPress?
So WordPress.org is kind of the main organization website. There's a lot of information about it there, just the general information. I think if you have specific questions, can WordPress do this or can it do that? I would search for that and then find probably reviews or articles posted about that, or discussion forums, because it's a very broad question. So I would say if you want the broad answer, look at wordpress.org, but for any specific questions, just search for those.
When do you think a business should hire someone to build and manage their website? Is the size of the business or the time required?
Great question. I mean, it depends. Sometimes tiny businesses with very little revenue are hiring professional developers to make a website, and other times you have a business owner who's maybe making hundreds of thousands a year in revenue, who's directly managing their WordPress website. I've talked with both. So when do you want to hire a developer? I think it typically comes down to, do you have the time and the motivation to learn WordPress as much as you need to, and to maintain and manage it yourself? I think that's the biggest question. A lot of business owners, they don't like this kind of stuff, and it's not for everybody. And so if you feel like that's you, then finding a developer will probably be your best bet, because they'll be able to get your website up quickly, it'll work right, and you won't have to worry about it. As far as developer recommendations go, you can contact me. I work with developers both here in Virginia and also offshore who do a variety of website and app development. And I think one of the ways I can be beneficial in your situation is helping to talk about what you need in a website and helping you to find the right developer who can do that, as affordably as possible. So.
And we're at 1, but Cameron said that he can stay for a few more minutes so we can wrap up. But if you guys need to go, that's okay too. We will post the recording and we will send everybody the recording. So if you have to skip out, we can send you the recording and you can see the end of this Q&A session. And just keep an eye out for that email that'll come to you with the information and the PowerPoint link. Do you have any tips and tricks for dealing with comments about a post?
Yeah, so if you make a blog post, here on the left on my screen, you can see the comments. So this particular page has no comments because they don't have any blog posts. They're not using that at all. So for dealing with comments was the question. If you're getting inappropriate comments, you can have an option here you have to moderate and approve all comments before they're public. So I guess my question is more of what do you want to do with the comments, right? Because there's different use cases. So maybe you could give me a little bit more detail about that.
Okay, and let's see. We've had a couple of people say they're going to reach out to you. So of course, you guys can email help@virginiasbdc.org, set up a counseling session there, or you can contact Cameron at his email as well and ask him questions and contact him. So let's see. What are some classic mistakes web developers make in building a website?
I assume you mean like a professional web developer. The biggest mistake that a professional web developer will make is not understanding their client's business. I worked with a client recently who was importing outdoor sporting equipment from China, and he hired a web developer here in Virginia to build a website for that business. The web developer didn't understand the types of products, so the theme that they selected was not a great fit, and the layout of the pages also wasn't a great fit. So it's usually just a lack of understanding about the business goals. So if you're really able to communicate your business objectives and your target market to a developer who's a good developer, they'll have the right information to build your website in the correct way.
How can you prevent comments from getting spammed?
Yeah, so
posts too.
comments, yeah, so again, we're talking about like the blog post and comments on a blog post. Yeah. So for that specific issue about spam, there are several plugins that are actually to stop spam in the comments. I think they introduce the CAPTCHAs, the little thing you have to check, say you're human, and different things like that. And they'll introduce that on the website for you to eliminate or drastically reduce that spam. So I think the plugins are the way to go for that.
Do you have any examples of some exceptional websites for small businesses?
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I have a lot of examples of unexceptional websites for small businesses, unfortunately. I do a lot of websites analysis and reviews for small businesses in Virginia, and so I'm happy to take a look at your website and give you that feedback. I don't have off the top of my head a collection of like great small business websites. I'm sure if I thought about it, I could, and that's actually a really interesting point, and so I will do that. But because every small business is quite different, and so saying a good website for one might not be a good website for another business, So yeah, it's a great question. I don't really have the perfect answer at this time, but it's something to think about. Thanks.
I've been using Elementor to build my site and I like it, but was wondering what elements for a blog you think should be on the landing page or home page, or should be static throughout the site.
Yeah, so if I understand the question correctly, you're saying if you have a blog, do you want to have like thumbnails of those blog posts somewhere on the home page, and how do you put those there? If that's the question, then the answer is yes. I think that's a great idea. The way I like to see it displayed is towards the bottom of the home page, have like 3 or 5 blog post snippets, which can be a featured image plus maybe 1 sentence of text with a read more button. So you can have those 3 or 5 kind of highlighted blog posts or most recent blog posts. And then if somebody clicks on that, they'll jump to the full post.
How do you compare WordPress to Drupal?
Yeah, Drupal is, you could think of it as a competitor to WordPress, but it's a lot less user-friendly. It's a lot more clunky as far as, it's just not as easy to navigate. And I could not recommend Drupal for any business now. I've used it in the past, and yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. I think WordPress is, for what it does similar things, it's just better in almost every way. So unless there's this unique use case where Drupal comes in more handy, but yeah, for the majority of you out there, I would not consider Drupal.
All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. There were a couple questions left, but we got the majority of them. We answered quite a bit of questions. So thank you so much, Cameron. For those of you that still have questions after this, please go ahead, feel free to email us, either help@virginiasbdc.org or Cameron's email that I posted in the chat there. I will include that contact. Yep, Cameron's put it up. And I will include that contact that will be with your slides when we send you this information out after the webinar. We will be sending you an email with a link to the recording, the evaluation, and the slides. And I posted a few things for you in the chat as well. If you all would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, you can visit virginiasbdc.org/training. And then you can sign up for the second part of this series as well. You can also access on our website the COVID Business Recovery Center, which we developed to help owners not only continue business operations, but to thrive and recover. These resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org, or you can visit our website, and that includes signing up with Cameron as well. So thank you all for attending, and we hope to see you at our next session. And thank you so much for spending so much time with us, Cameron. We appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for your great questions and participation. Hope you all have a great day, and feel free to reach out if you'd like to discuss any of these things further. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.